Airbnb just released some of its biggest updates in years, and it could affect you tremendously as a host and could even get you kicked off the platform if you don't operate in their correct way. Today, we talked to Mark Simpson from Boostly, who is a direct booking expert, and we're going to break down how these Airbnb changes can affect you and how you can get around them without doing some nefarious things that you're not comfortable with doing. Let's make sure your short-term rental is a long-term success with today's episode of BiggerStays. Are you drowning in spreadsheets and guessing your STR profits? Don't worry, I get it. I was too until I found Baselane. Baselane is an all-in-one banking and bookkeeping financial platform that was designed for short-term rental investors. Imagine, no more reconciliation or manual data entries. Baselane's banking and AI-powered bookkeeping instantly will categorize your income and expenses by each property for real-time cash flow that you can see. Baselane automates all the financial busy work so you don't have to, and you can just focus on what matters, getting more bookings and scaling your business. It's time to take control of your finances instead of them controlling you. Are you ready to automate and supercharge your cash flow? Click the link below for your exclusive $100 bonus. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of BiggerStays. My name is Garrett Brown. I'm the Bigger Pockets STR expert. And today we have Mark Simpson from Boostly on to talk about some major changes that are going on in the Airbnb short-term rental world. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited today. It's good to be back on Bigger Pockets world.
Yeah, no, we're super excited to have you here. And I knew when these changes were starting to trickle out, and I had a ton of hosts reaching out to me of like, you know, how does this affect me? I knew you were one of the main people I wanted to get your insight from your vast knowledge of direct bookings and just the Airbnb platform in general. So for people that aren't familiar possibly with what has transpired in the last few weeks between Airbnb's new policy updates, do you want to give them a rundown on what is kind of happening out there and what they should be expecting going forward, possibly from Airbnb?
Yeah, 100%. So for those who are not in the know, it was at the end of April where there was a little post that went out on, it's a very popular Facebook group. And then that post in a very popular Facebook group took a bit of attraction. A very popular YouTuber who talks about Airbnb did a live video that got now over 33,000 views. And on the back of that, it just sort of spread as it does on social media. And what it's all conspired is that Airbnb have changed a little bit of the language in their off-platform policy T's and C's. You know, that policy has been there for forever and a day. It's been updated as they go. The good news for everybody is that it's not drastically changed from what it was to what it is. And you can simply go on something like Wayback Machine and just see the difference. The effects are going to kick in on May the 10th. But the reason why it got so many people up in arms is because of the terminology off-platform policy. And there's some pretty, direct words in there. And simply what Airbnb have done is they've removed the vagueness. So there was a lot of vague in the terminology. Now it's very direct, and we can dig into exactly what they were. But I feel like with anything with Airbnb nowadays, especially when you talk about off-platform, it's one of these things where everybody does it or does it to an extent, but there's right ways and wrong ways, and we can definitely dig into those on this.
I agree with you. Their policies used to be definitely more vague in nature, and now I think they're trying to give themselves some leeway to, kick people off the platforms that are kind of skirting these rules and make them a little more concrete. I'm pulling up the policy update right now so we can even kind of just go through what are some of the changes. I don't know if you have a few off the top of your head that you remembered and want to kind of rattle them.
Well, I feel like the main thing as well with this is that, for what I do, like for the last 10 years, I've been talking about direct bookings. And the reason why I started talking about direct bookings wasn't so much like an anti-Airbnb or an anti-booking.com or an anti-Expedia. It was just more that I saw so many people over here in the United Kingdom where I'm based, but, more throughout the world, that they were starting businesses within short-term rentals. And they were just solely building their whole business on the back of one platform generating all of their revenue. And, I've been in this industry for a long time. I've been very lucky that I've been able to travel all over the world now. And And I know a lot of business owners, not just in short-term rentals, but further afield. And it's always been crazy to me that anybody would look to start a business. And I'm not talking about the hobbyist hosts who maybe just got one property. I got to meet a lot of people at Bigger Pockets at BP Con who are, in the long-term rental game, who have maybe had one property and they came up to me with like, you know what, I've got this one property. It's a second investment. It's not my main gig. I don't really care. So I'm on the Airbnb. That's fine. That's sound. My biggest issue is with hosts or companies that this is their main gig. This is what they're going to go. They're going to go into short-term rentals or even medium-term rentals, and this is their business. And for the life of me, I can't understand how they solely rely on one platform for their business. And for the last 10 years, I've been showing everybody how to generate direct bookings. And a big part of it is what we're going to talk about, is where you have a guest or a future potential guest land on your Airbnb listing. And I'm like, well, let me show you everything that I've done over these years of being involved in it to get them off the platform and get them to book with you direct. So this is what they're basically trying to tighten up. And, there's definitely loopholes. There's definitely things you can do, and it works well within the policy. But what we're going to talk about is to get people to stop doing. And the things that they stop doing, it may sound like common sense, but there are a lot of people who are doing it. We can go on it one by one if you like.
In a broad sense of this, and I agree with you completely. As somebody myself who has really thrived off of direct bookings, I learned a lot of things from you and a lot from social media and other things. I always found it, I don't know what word I want to use, maybe interesting for lack of better words, that it'd be like an airline just listing on, Expedia only, but you can't access them on any other OTA out there, and them expecting to generate as much profit as people that have a wide net cast. That is something any host out there, especially, if they have that property like you mentioned. I have a couple consultation clients that they only are on Airbnb. They have one property, and I totally get that. The ease of use there, and the Airbnb software is probably one of the easiest to understand from a host perspective. But if you're trying to take that next step, this is when things like Airbnb's new policy updates, like let's tackle the security deposit situation now. I personally would require a security deposit off the platform for years before and never had an issue with it. Airbnb would list it. It was completely fine. I had an automated system that would take care of this. Now I'm kind of worried because now it's almost like Airbnb is telling me I have to rely on air cover to take care of any damages or anything going forward. What are you kind of seeing with the security deposit and air cover issue that's kind of there?
This is a really good place to start. So the security deposit has always been a bit of friction, a bit of traction, a bit of sort of a buffer for people to book. And Airbnb, what they're starting to do is they're getting rid of they're calling it simplified pricing, right? So basically, when you land on a listing, and this is coming into effect very soon, you'll just see the price. It won't be broken down into little things like cleaning fees, etc. They're just going to list the price. They're doing this to fall in line with other big online travel agents. Now, the security deposit is an interesting one. I, for one, am not a fan. I understand why you do it, but I always look at it from a guest-facing perspective, as in where you're going to make a booking, and let's just say you're going to spend $2,000, right, for a stay, and then they're going to charge a big security deposit on top of it. Sometimes that can be the factor whether there's a booking or not. Now, a workaround with this is what's called a damage waiver. And this is proven to be really successful. And this is something that is allowed within the off-platform policy. This is allowed within Airbnb. And it actually is more preferred with guests. And again, you've got to always think of it. Yes, you've got your property. Yes, you've got your business. But you've got to think, at the end of the day, you need to get bookings coming in. So what you need to do is you need to go and get a damage waiver. So a damage waiver can be Safely. It can be Truvy, which used to be called Superhog. It can be any of those. But what happens with a damage waiver, your future potential guests, once they make that booking, they'll get a little message from you just to saying, hey, just to let you know, instead of forking out, $450 for a security deposit, just pay this little $25 damage waiver and it will cover you, but it'll also cover us. And you cover sometimes up to like $5-6 million, which is, it's a big part. It's basically a version of air cover, but it's off platform. My
general, I don't know if concern is the right word, but I think sometimes in my brain, how I look at it, and I've toyed with damage waivers and things. I personally have found that a lot of my direct bookings is what I'm speaking on now, but Airbnb is a little different, is that when guests have to do that that refundable deposit that I require, I feel like they are more apt to treat the property with care because they want their money to come back. I'm worried that with a damage waiver, they're almost going to be like, oh, they're good. Like if I damage stuff, then who cares? Somebody's going to take care of it. That's what I paid for. What are your kind of thoughts on that side of it? Because that's probably my concern with it.
With security deposit is 100%. And, I've always A/B tested it over the years when we've had our vacation rental, security deposit, damage waivers. I can totally see it from both ends. But one thing about Airbnb, and the one thing that I really do like about Airbnb, is that they never really make decisions off a whim. They have some of the biggest data that you could imagine. If you listen to interviews with Brian Chesky, they are always looking ahead. They're looking for the next thing. And I feel like with security deposits, I truly believe that this could be a thing of the past in the future. Damage waivers. Yeah. Will the guest not treat your property as well as if there was a security deposit there for a couple of $100, etc.? But I feel like the way that we are going is it will be the elimination of the security deposits. They're probably going to get phased out. I mean, if you look at it, 10 years ago, when I first was properly coming into starting Boostly, before that, I've been involved in this industry full time since 2011. I was pretty much born into this. And in 2011, when I came back into the business full time to come into the family business, there was no instant book. Everything was inquiry only. And if you look at how Airbnb first started, it was inquiry only. There was no instant book. That was something that was phased in because they looked at what the data of where people were at. And I feel like the inquiry only is going to be the version of what security deposits are now. I feel like that eventually will get phased out. Everything that Airbnb are doing at the moment is sort of pushing towards that. Now, will this new off-platform policy prevent you from taking a security deposit via your PMS? And you use Logify, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, correct.
So no, that's not going to be the case. So bringing it back to now, and there's obviously a host talking about now, and I said, listen, Matt, what is the now? Airbnb will not stop that. Everything that is connected to a PMS or a platform that is preferred by Airbnb, that will still be allowed. What they're asking for you to do now in your property description is if there's anything that you need to collect, whether it is, and I've seen every single comment and post you can imagine in Facebook groups over the last week, some people are saying, well, I need to get this because of this. For example, I need to get an email address because my property is in an area that needs to have every single guest bit of data before they arrive and can get into the resort. That is fine. Security deposits, that is fine. You've just got to document it in the property description and the listing on Airbnb. So you will be good. You will be fine. But I would be also as well looking at what's being said between the lines and sort of planning for the future when it comes to things like security deposits.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's something I definitely want to toy with more with, I'm on to 8 properties right now. And I think it's something I'm going to test out with damage waivers and kind of go that route. But while we're kind of on that topic, you briefly touched on it a minute ago that Airbnb just recently came out and now they're exclusively showing all pricing up front pretty much. It's the default for different FTC reasons that they did in America that almost forced a lot of these OTAs to do this. So if you have a damage waiver fee involved, like this will be shown in your upfront pricing. How do you think this is going to help host, and is there a potential to hurt host at all for this?
In terms of hurting and helping, well, I feel like this is something that could potentially happen a lot quicker. So simplified pricing, we talked about it, where the future potential guest, when they get to the checkout page, they see just the one price. Something happened recently where it was a Twitter storm that came up and cleaning fees were just a thing of the past. They're gone. And I feel like we're only another Twitter storm away from the service charge that Airbnb charges to guests from going as well. So at the moment, the way that it works on Airbnb, you have the 3% rate, which is the host rate. And that works where the host pays 3% and then the guest pays a service charge fee from anywhere sort of between 12 to 14%. The other method is the simplified pricing. And simplified pricing, again, it's more common outside of US and Canada, where when you connect, so you've got Logify, you connect Airbnb to Logify, anywhere apart from US and Canada and some places in Southern America, and you instantly get moved to the simplified pricing rate. And the simplified pricing rate is a flat rate fee of 14%. and the guest pays zero service charge. What Airbnb have been A/B testing recently, and I've been doing a little bit of testing on this myself, is that when I'm on the search, again, not in US and not in Canada, which obviously the majority of people listen to this show, but if I'm in the UK and I'm running a search on Airbnb and I'm going through the motions, I've found an area that I want to stay, I've done my filters on what I'm looking for. In the search, it's actually highlighting properties that do not charge the service charge to me as the guest. So basically the hosts that are on simplified pricing. Now, what it looks like to me, and again, this is just my opinion, is that where we're going to be moving with all of this, with the simplified pricing and all of this, is I can envision a time where everybody gets moved to that simplified pricing rate. I can see a time where they remove the restrictions of US and Canada. And if you're connected to a PMS, which is property management software, you are just instantly on that flat rate of 14%. I think we're going to be moving further away from that 3% model. I believe that they will keep it, but they will keep it for the hobbyist hosts. And I think that the reason why they'll keep that is that a large majority of people on Airbnb are between 1 to 15 properties. There's an even larger majority of them who are the hobbyist hosts with the 1 or the 2 properties. I feel like they would be cutting their nose off to spite their face if they just say to all of them, listen, instead of you paying 3% for this little room or spare house that you've got on Airbnb, we're going to charge you 14% and we're going to make your guest charge nothing. I feel like that would annoy so many people that they would just lose a ton of inventory. And I don't think they want to do that. But I feel like what they're moving towards is they're going, right, if you're a professional host, AKA you've got a PMS, right? And you're connected to it, then you're going to have to start treating like this like a business. And yes, that may annoy a lot of people, but I think a lot of people will just suck it up because what they're also doing is they're obviously on Airbnb, but because of the PMS, and again, it's Lodgify, there's Guesty, there's Hospitable, there's loads of them. They're also then encouraged to list on Vrbo, Booking.com, and all these other OTAs as well. And I feel like that is where we are going to go. And again, this new pricing thing, that will it affect hosts? No, you won't notice that big of a difference. Will it help hosts? No. But the cool thing is about going back to the direct booking strategy, which is what obviously I talk about a lot. The beauty of these PMS tools and the way that it works is that you push your rates to the online travel agents from your PMS. And a tactic that I've been talking about since I've started Boostly is that I show you how to put the price up on Airbnb and keep it at a lower rate, your base rate on your PMS. And the cool thing with all of this is that you can run social media campaigns, email campaigns, where you're always saying the best rates are when you book direct. And it's going to be night and day. It's going to be so clear when they see the price on Airbnb. They run a super quick Google search. They find your listing. They find your website. They find your Google business listing, whatever you want to call it. And they can see the comparison and the price. They're going to come and book with you direct every single day. And there's a really cool tool that has been created that's called Directo. And this tool, Directo, is a free Google Chrome extension. It's been downloaded 500,000 times in the Google Chrome extension, and it sits in Google Chrome. And when you're scouring the world of short-term rentals, the OTAs, looking for a place to stay, the really cool thing about this tool, even if they're on Airbnb search, it will tell the user, it will tell the guest, hey, this price is cheaper when you book direct. And that's a really cool tool. And that's just one of 3 tools that have been created in the last year. So that shows to me that there is definite customer sentiment for this. Yes, Airbnb is the brand, but people aren't married to the brand. They will, at the end of the day, want to look after the main person, which is themselves, and they'll want to look after their bottom line. I think simplified pricing in a crazy roundabout way will really help those hosts who want to increase their direct bookings, because it will be night and day. This is the price on Airbnb. This is the price when you book direct. And there's tools out there that's going to help people push them towards it.
This is very cool. I had no idea about that tool. So that's definitely something that guests are becoming way more savvy, and also checking prices and knowing that the possibility for direct bookings are out there. And you hit on a lot of great points that I have 2 kind of follow-ups to those that I'll kind of, from my experience as well. I love to be, one reason why I'm such a big advocate for direct bookings, just like you, is it always is. I always am able to tell people, like, if you book on my website, it is going to be cheaper than on Airbnb. And I think Airbnb is trying to, put that service fee onto the host so they don't look like the bad guys, quote unquote. Because I love to point out, like, this price is that high because Airbnb has to charge their service fee. And if I'm able to push them to my direct booking site, you're going to find the best prices. And I also have found myself, and I was talking with Ben Wolf recently, who has a place called Stay on Narrow that's extremely popular in Texas. And he was able to reemphasize the same things that I'm seeing, that usually people, when they're on your direct booking site, they're less price sensitive actually than people that are searching on Airbnb. Because if they came to your direct booking site, they actually are either aware of your product, most likely through social media or something. If you're savvy and you're able to push them from off Airbnb, which I'm going to get to in a second, once they're on your site, like even Ben mentioned, he's able to get almost the same rate on his direct booking site as Airbnb, just because guests there are more willing to be involved in that experience and things. But one of the ways I was pushing people from Airbnb to my personal sites was I would have like a little blurb inside of like, hey, follow us at, and I would space out, and I would put my direct social media there. And a lot of people would come and find me there or find me on my website. Now I'm a little worried about, are they going to come for me now? Because like, are they using AI to see what I'm putting in my listings? Or what are your thoughts about that? Because I'm trying to find savvy ways to get them to my direct booking site. But I'm kind of worried now. Like I might slip up and put the wrong thing, So I'm curious what your thoughts there.
You are good. You are good. I mean, the terminology around that hasn't changed at all. It's still the same. You cannot on your Airbnb listing in the description, in the blurb, put www.cameronranchglamping.com or at instagram.com/Cameron Ranch Glamping. It's just not that's never been allowed, and that will never be allowed for so many reasons. But you can 100% still billboard. So for example, on every listing, this is what I really recommend a lot of people do, is that they brand their overall business name, obviously, but you also as well want to brand your property. And this is something that Ben does unbelievably well. There's people like Isaac French who do this unbelievably well, all out of Texas as well. So it's the Texans that are, that are doing this, where they brand their business, they brand their property. And so, for example, something that I always teach this, and I taught it in the books that I've published, the Book Direct Playbook, I speak about it on the YouTube and podcast all the time, is that you say in the first line, in the first bit of description on your Airbnb listing, welcome to X, brought to you by X, right? And if you even want to get even further down the rabbit hole, if you feel that your name of your business is very generic, you could just say, for example, Cameron Ranch Glamping, brought to you by the overall company name based out of here in Texas, near Houston, Texas, right? Because what it's encouraging that guest to do, or that future potential guest to do, is to run a Google search on your name. And you may be thinking, well, who would do that? A lot of people are doing that. There was a viral TikTok campaign last year, 2024, where content creators were showing people how to reverse engineer images on Airbnb, how to run it into Google, which would then find their direct booking website. And that was seen by millions of people. So much so, and this is the world of content creation works, when something hits other content creators' copy, and there were so many travel content creators that were jumping on this bandwagon. I see it over TikTok. I saw it on Instagram. I saw it on YouTube. I was getting people messaging me. This is how viral it came. And a lot of people were doing it and still are doing it. The fun fact is that 75% of all direct bookings that happen on websites come on the back of an online travel agent search, which is a really, really interesting stat. So what that shows to me is that so many people will begin their search and they will gravitate to Airbnb. It will gravitate to booking.com. It will gravitate to Expedia or Vrbo, but they don't stop there. Yes, a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't stop there. They will go and do that search because they are savvy, because they are either price savvy, or they just want to have a little mooch and have a little look. Because again, if you think about it, Airbnb doesn't have a chat box. Airbnb doesn't have a customer support that guests can call to ask questions. You, as a host, have that ability to do. I'm on your website now, and right at the very top is a phone number that I can call. So if I've got questions before booking, I can speak to you. And so many people do have questions. Another amazing stat was that it was 77% of all guests, and it was just done on a survey that interviewed 15,000 people after the pandemic. 77% of those people, if they had a question during the booking process, so just before they put the credit card information in and they hit book, if they had a question, would they want to speak to somebody at the property before hitting that booking? And they were going, yes. Nearly 8 out of 10 bookings would say, yeah, they would want to. And this is where you have that ability as a host, as a small operator who maybe just has 1 property, 2 properties, even 10, 8, 15 properties. You've got that ability to still speak to your guest. And that's what people want. If your website is done right, and the thing about, Ben's websites, and this is why he can probably command near on the same rates, is that when you go to their website, and again, the context is that he's worked with some of the biggest influencers, the biggest content creators out there. They're driving so much traffic to their website. They're almost the people are landing on the site. They're like doing the FOMO, right? It's just like, I just got to book this place before it sells out because they've been driven to it. If your website is good, and if your website is as solid as can be, and the booking process is as smooth as can be, and you've got things like chat boxes that, whether it's powered by a human or AI, it can really make the difference between turning a looker into a booker. And the billboard effect is so real, and it is still real on Airbnb. So please don't feel like the new policy updates is preventing it because of the more harsher and more direct terminology that Airbnb are using. It is still allowed as long as you do it right.
I can sense that now because of how many questions I get on my direct booking platform with guests. Hey, does this house have this amenity attached to it? Even though that's clearly listed in the descriptions of things, people still sometimes also want to be like, I'll have people call us and say, I just wanted to talk to a human to make sure this even was real, There's
a reason why, sorry to butt in there, but the reason why is that there are still a large amount of listings on Airbnb, even though they have used AI and because they purchased a software tool called Game Planner, an AI tool. And that was basically to make sure to eradicate fake listings. But there still is a large amount of fake listings. And there is still this sentiment that if I book this property, is it 100% going to be there when I arrive? And this is, again, coming back to direct bookings, we as hosts, we as smaller operators have got just a massive opportunity here to be that human on the end of a conversation, end of a phone call, just to give that guest the relaxation that they're going to make a booking. They're going to pay, $2,000, $3,000 in some cases. And it's going to be there, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be awesome.
I have a lot of custom automatic messages that send out especially when somebody books. I don't have as much automation. I have a few virtual assistants I work with, some AI tools. But when somebody books, I have a set of messages that get sent out. And I do such a good job with the wording that people think it's actually me. And they'll send emails back like, man, thank you so much for this information, Garrett. And that's part of the process that, hosts need to build out, that, you can do a lot of these things automated, but it just needs to have that tone of you. And when you can step in to answer these specific questions, that will alleviate so many guest worries before they've even checked in, another reason why I'm such a big advocate of direct bookings is if you can set that guest experience from the second they're on your website, from looker to a booker, I love that phrase as well. The second they actually book, if you can set it up to where they feel extremely highly valued for staying with you and everything is set up for them, you're already starting off, for lack of better words, like you're way ahead of the race, basically. Instead of, if you start bad from the beginning, their experience is going to be hard to bring that back up to something that they really are appreciative of and also feel like they're getting the value that they paid for. So all great information there. I think one of the last things that I really want to touch on, and this is kind of, I guess it's like a little bit of a double question, is there's some people worried about, collecting email addresses or doing their own background checks. And because I've had guests book before on Airbnb that they're supposed to have their ID verified, all these things, and then their username is something that it would never be on an ID. And so you're just kind of wondering, you're like, did you really get your ID verified? And, we do our own things. And That's probably a little bit of a worrisome thing for some hosts, but what are your thoughts with, besides the identity portion, also a lot of people were collecting guest emails for, their rental agreement or for their own marketing benefits. Where do you see that kind of changing, and should hosts be worried about those kind of things?
Yeah, so the good news about this again is nothing has changed. The terminology is a little bit more direct, but it is still the same. If a future potential guest has initiated a booking on the platform, so for example, they find you, they send an inquiry, that is initiating the booking. You cannot take that booking off platform. There are ways and means, but let's just say you cannot take that booking off platform. And at the end of the day, we're very lucky in this industry. And we come back to the first thing that we spoke about. There is no other industry that I know out there that you can start a business today, take a couple of pictures, list it on a website, and be pretty much guaranteed revenue coming in. For website design, for example, we do website design at Boostly. When I started 10 years ago, there was no website that I could go and list my services on where I guaranteed to get revenue coming in. I had to drag people kicking and screaming to do business with me when I first got going. But we have that in industry of hospitality because we're in industry of creating memories, and Airbnb is that. And at the end of the day, if they go to all this effort and a guest has initiated a booking on the platform, just allow it the first time. The way that people are literally flipping out now is that they feel like they can never, ever, ever promote their direct bookings ever again. And that's not true. It is still the same. A company like StayFi, for example, StayFi is where you arrive at the property. If you want to use the Wi-Fi, you got to give up your email address with a nice splash page. That is 100% still allowed. If you look at every other OTA, Expedia and the Booking Holidays Group, which own Booking.com, Agodia, they have always said it is up to us to bring you the customer on the first visit. It is up to you to then keep that customer. And they are totally on board with that. And Airbnb have always been on board with it. In fact, the new wording even marries up to what those others have been saying for some time. But you can't obviously go asking in the Airbnb messaging system for your email address, right?
Yeah.
There is the little asterisk. The context of it is that, yes, to get on a resort or to get into a certain area, or your HOA or somebody may need this information. For that, absolutely fine. If you're going to use it for marketing purposes, not allowed. What they have said at Airbnb, and again, when this all kicked off, I'm very lucky that I've got a third party that speaks to Airbnb pretty much on a daily basis. They went to them and they asked that question because I wanted to know the answer to that question. Because obviously Airbnb don't want to talk to me for obvious reasons. But they said that is absolutely fine. If you have to collect an email for access or for HOA or for something like that, you just got to put it in your property description. You've just got to say, hey, be totally transparent. We need this when you book. For everything else, for marketing purposes, a tool like StayFi is phenomenal because it doesn't only get the lead booker's data, it gets all of the guests' emails, phone numbers, etc. And they've got the tools for the automation in the back end. If you haven't got the money to invest in a tool like StayFi, a super simple Google form is absolutely fine. In fact, when I spoke at BPCon, I laid this out from like the beginning to end of how to do this. There's a video somewhere on YouTube. You can Google search it, or if you want to message me on Instagram at Boostly UK, I'll go and find it and I'll send it to you. More than happy to do it. So it's at BOOSTLY UK, Boostly UK. I laid out the full way on how to do this, how to create the Google form, what to put into the Google form, and it is absolutely fine. Another thing that people were spewing about and sort of crying out about was digital guidebooks. Digital guidebooks, are you allowed to have them? Yes, you are allowed to have them, but be aware that the AI that Airbnb has now, they scan every link that you send to the guest in the booking process. Okay, so let's just say, Garrett, you've booked with me. Part of my email automation or messaging automation that goes out includes a link to a digital guidebook. Just be aware that the AI will scan that. And if there is any explicit terminology that says, hey, Garrett, do you want to cancel this booking on Airbnb and book with me directly? Here's my phone number. You will get flagged for that. So just be clever, just be smart, just be savvy. The other thing that people were worried about is that you come and stay with me, you have a great time, and in 6 months' time or in 3 months' time, you want to message me back or you want to contact me directly and go, I'd like to book with you. Can I book with you direct? People were thinking that that's not allowed. That is 100% allowed. As long as the initial inquiry, the initial message doesn't come through Airbnb. So again, if you were to WhatsApp me SMS me, phone me, email me. That's absolutely fine because the inquiries come totally separate to Airbnb. But if you were to go back into Airbnb Messenger, message me on the Airbnb app and say, hey, Mark, I'd like to come back again, that is where it gets a little gray. And again, because they've initiated that conversation for Airbnb, Airbnb is expecting you, the host, to honor that. But as long as you're smart, as long as you're clever, as long as you get that data when the guest arrives or by using Google Forms and things like that, then, it's totally fine. It's totally allowed and it's totally accepted. And it is in the policy.
Definitely very insightful for a lot of people out there, because I know everybody was on pins and needles as this was kind of coming out, like thinking their listing was going to get shut down because they sent out a guidebook link and all these things like that. And I'm sure you saw all the worrisome that was kind of going around just like I did. So I think this adds a lot of clarity for people out there. We'll definitely, like, you wrote the book on direct booking, the literal book on direct booking. So if anybody wants to check that out, where could they check out your book?
It's called The Book Direct Playbook. It is on Amazon. Unfortunately, I can't sell it direct because I do not have a printing press behind me. So you have to go onto Amazon. And again, I said this on stage at BPCon and I say it a lot, is that my worry for this industry is that Airbnb does to hospitality what Amazon did to e-commerce, right? So for example, this book, right? For every book that I sell, for every dollar that I make on Amazon.com, they take 66 cents. So that's 66% commission that they take. And I don't get the name. So I haven't got a clue who buys it. I don't get phone numbers. I don't get an opportunity to get an email address. I literally just get money put into my bank every quarter and that's it, right? My worry is that the way that we are walking around calling ourselves Airbnb hosts, we are literally walking around saying that we've got an Airbnb business. We are not branding ourselves. We are not branding our business. We're not branding our names. We're not trying to build the business. If we keep going down this route, and I know there'll be a little bit of an uproar if they get rid of this 3% and turn it into 14% flat rate fee, simplified pricing. If Airbnb had like providing 80% of your revenue, they can just go, you know what, fair dues. I'm giving you 80% of your revenue here or 100% of your revenue here. What are you going to do about it? So what happens if they go, well, you know what, this 14%, we don't feel like this is fair. Let's knock it up to 20%. What are you going to do about it? Right? And it's a case of people will just suck it up and they'll have a little bitch and moan on Facebook groups, but they'll just go, well, what can I do? This is why now we have got this opportunity. This is why now we have got the ability. We are very lucky that we still get the phone number of our guests when they book on Airbnb. I can see a case in point in time, maybe not this year, but next year, they get rid of it. Any communication, you have to do it in app, right? And this policy amendment just speaks and just shows this happening. Fortunately, selfishly for me, this last week has been the best week of business at Boostly for a long time. Our calendar has been off the chain and crazy because people want to build their own direct booking strategy. So Airbnb, thanks for the assist. Keep on doing these things, send more people my way. But and truly, honestly, anybody who's watching this, listening to this, and if this is something that you want to be your business, maybe not now, but in a year's time, just please start to think about building in a strategy that is not just solely reliant on one platform bringing in your revenue, because unfortunately, it could be too late. And it could just be a case that your account gets shut down. That's the worst case. It could just be a listing gets taken offline for 6 weeks and you've got no revenue. It could just be that you get a couple of crappy reviews and your listing drops from page 1 to page 3. And we all know nobody looks at page 3. So start doing it now while you have the opportunity to do something about it.
Amazing advice. And I can't reiterate that anymore, how important that is. That I've heard horror stories of one small thing, you hear stories of somebody saying there was bed bugs there and then they shut your listing down and there wasn't even bed bugs there, and it's like, what do you do in that? So we could go on for hours, I'm sure, about it. And we definitely will have you back very soon to go more into direct bookings and some of the more high level things there. But, we were going to talk about that today, but then all these changes came and I was like, I know the perfect person to really give some insight into this. And you obviously are very well versed in the topic. So if any viewers are listening to this, how can they connect with you if they're interested in talking more and anything like that?
Yeah, no, 100%. So the best thing to do, head on over to Instagram It's at Boostly UK, Boostly UK. Ask me any questions that you like. If you want the copy of that video that I mentioned where I laid out about the Google form, please just hit me up on there. And if you've got any questions, that's all the links in the bios. If you want to have a chat to us about website design, there's links in the bios on Instagram. And obviously Bigger Pockets. I'm in the forum as well. I've been allowed in. So if you want to,
you're always allowed. As long as I'm here, you're always allowed. So no worries.
I'm in. So if I'm in the short-term rental forum, so come and ask questions in there.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. Y'all let us know in the comments if y'all want Mark to come back and do a really high-level direct booking education seminar for y'all, for lack of better words. And we appreciate y'all watching all the way through. And we'll see y'all in the next episode.